Today we are going to discuss about the DC circuits with dependent source. So before that we will see the classification of sources. The sources are classified into two types. It is independent source and dependent source. When we talk about the independent source, two sources comes into the picture, voltage source and current source. Whereas when we talk about the dependent source, there are four types of dependent source, that is voltage controlled voltage source, voltage controlled current source, current controlled voltage source, and current controlled current source. All these independent and dependent sources we are going to discuss in the next slide one by one. So first of all we will discuss independent voltage source. So when we talk about the independent source, the value of this voltage source at any instant is independent of the value or the direction of the current that is flowing through the circuit. The terminal voltage may be a constant or it may be some specified function of time. This is the representation of independent source with DC source. This is the representation of voltage source with AC source where the value is with respect to the time. Next, we will discuss about the independent current source. The value and the direction of current source at any instant is independent of the value or direction of the voltage that is appeared across the terminals of the source. The output current may be a constant or it may be a function of time. This is the representation of current source with DC circuits. This is the representation of current source with AC circuits with respect to the time. Now we will switch upon the dependent source, as we have already seen that these dependent sources are of four types. So if the voltage or current of a source depends upon some other voltage or current, then it is called as a dependent or controlled source. The dependent source are of four types depending on whether a control variable is voltage or current and the controlled source is voltage source or current source. According to that, there are four types as we have seen earlier: voltage controlled voltage source, voltage controlled current source, current controlled voltage source, current controlled current source. So now we will see these control sources one by one. So first control source is voltage controlled voltage source, written by VCVS. So here the output voltage VCD is depends on the variable voltage VAB. So the voltage VCD depends upon the controlled voltage VAB and the constant mu, which is a dimensionless constant, and it is also called as a voltage gain. So VCD can be represented as mu times VAB. Next source, voltage controlled current source VCCS. As we are saying that the voltage controlled current source, so the current source, the value of this current source ICD is controlled by the voltage input voltage VAB. So the current ICD depends upon the controlled voltage VAB and the constant GM. This GM constant is called as a mutual conductance, and this GM has a dimension of amperes per volt, and the equation can be written as ICD is equal to GM times VAB. Next source is current controlled voltage source CCVS. Current controlled voltage source means the output voltage VCD is controlled by input voltage IAB. The voltage VCD depends only on the control current IAB and the constant R, and this R is called as the trans resistance or mutual resistance. The constant R has dimension of volt per ampere or ohms. So the equation can be written VCD is equal to R times IAB. Next, last source is current controlled current source. Here the current ICD value is controlled by input current IAB. So the current ICD depends only on the control current IAB, and the constant beta is called as the current gain, and the equation can be written as ICD is equal to beta times IAB. So in this way we have covered all dependent and independent source type. Now it's time to do the practice. So first, identify the dependent source in the network given. The dependent sources are basically represented in the shape of diamond. So first of all, you have to identify the diamond shapes and you have to notice the value of that diamond shape. If arrow is shown in the diamond shape means it is a current source, and depending on the value we can decide whether it is a current controlled or voltage controlled. So as in the mesh 1 there are two diamond shape. First one 2ix. Inside that diamond shape polarity is plus and minus. This polarity represents that it is a voltage source, but the value of this voltage source is depends on some another current Ix. So this voltage source is called as current controlled voltage source. Then second source is again having an polarity of plus minus with a value of 10 Iy. So again it is a voltage source, but it is controlled by some other value of current. So it is a current controlled voltage source. When we are going to the mesh 2, again one diamond shape is there with an polarity of plus minus, means again it is a voltage source only, but the value of this voltage source is depends on some another value of current Ix. So it is current controlled voltage source. When we switch to the mesh 3, there is one diamond shape which is indicating the flow of current. So it is a current source, and the value of this current source is depends on some another current Iy. So this source is called as a current controlled current source. Similarly, this is the second example to identify the dependent source where only one diamond shape is there and showing an indicator of arrow, means it is a current source. The value of this current source is 1 by 9 Vx, and this Vx is appearing across some another resistance. So this current source is depending on the voltage which is appearing across some another resistor. So it is called as a voltage controlled current source. In this way we have clear the concept of dependent source and independent source along with the example. So these are the few more examples. Thank you.